Hello everyone and good afternoon, morning, or whatever the time is. So my name is Temitayo Okusanya. I am a doctoral student of public and community health at the Medical College of Wisconsin. And today we would just be having like a very quick introduction on how to like prepare your data and select like your studies for like a meta-analysis. And before we get to the content of the day, first thing is that there are 9 steps that are usually like involved in doing a meta-analysis. So for the sake of today's presentation, we would only be talking about 2, which includes study selection and data extraction. Now, here we have a PRISMA flow chart. Ideally, what this does is to like help you have like, just imagine it as like a database for the ways in which you decide to obtain data. So ideally, when you want to do a meta-analysis, you know that you would have to like search for papers that aligns with your topic, right? So this flow chart is meant to help not just yourself, but any other person that looks at your paper to understand how you went about selecting papers, what you did, where you began from, and things like that. So you would generally go into PubMed or Embase or Google Scholar, whatever search engine that you decide, and you want to use like terms that aligns with the topic. So we call them mesh terms, right? Which stands for like medical subject headings. What you do with the mesh terms is to like say, for example, I want to do a study on cancer and how it relates to radiation or something like that, for example. Now you go on PubMed and you're like cancer in bracket mesh. So it's what it would do, what PubMed would do would be like to give you all the papers that like has cancer in their titles. It could be in titles or in the abstract. It would just generate them. So it's going to be a lots and lots of papers you would do. So that's where you have to record it on your flowchart. That when I searched PubMed or when I searched Google Scholar, I got like 4,000 papers. And from there, we would proceed on the other steps highlighted on the flowchart as we proceed in the presentation. So yeah, that's what this is about. Next thing is, this is just like a more detailed, what's it called now, explanation of the previous slide. Like I said, you'd have used your terms and tried to like search for papers on all this, from all the search engines. When you come together, you probably have like about 3,278 papers across all the search engines that you use. Then you realize that, oh, I have duplicates, like from the 3,278, I have duplicates of about 1,155. So you make note of that. Because the thing about doing a meta-analysis is that you have to be very accountable, like I said, not just to yourself, but to anyone else that is trying to look at this paper, so that anyone can do the same things that you have done and get, if not the same result, but something very similar. That's it. Your study has to be very replicatable. So now you have unique citations. Unique citations means that these are papers that are standing alone, meaning that you don't have duplicates. Let's just keep it short. There were no duplicates after you went through them. Now, in the process where you want to now, after getting all these papers, and it's a lot, I mean, so you want to like check for what you want to look at in this, like from all these papers. That's where the study selection criteria comes in. And here you would want to generally like make maybe an Excel spreadsheet of, okay, I have so papers. I'm going to take, for this first step, I want to take the author's names or the title, the year the study was done, and like a brief, what's it called? A brief, the abstract. So you take the abstract and you decide from looking at it like quickly like that, you decide, do I want to include this study or not? And that's where you make a decision of yes or no. So there are other ways you can decide to like do this part. You don't necessarily have to use Excel. It's just that Excel is basically very easy to do this. Now, after doing that part, in the process of selecting your study also, there's something we refer to as the inclusion and exclusion criteria. And the inclusion and exclusion criteria is a very important part of any kind of research that anyone wants to do. Inclusion criteria generally means that what are the things that would make us want to include this paper in the study, in this meta-analysis that we are doing? Why would we want to pick this paper? So before you even start with, okay, looking at all those papers that PubMed gave you and trying to see, you have to have a defined inclusion and exclusion criteria that would guide your selection of these papers. You remember that in the previous slide, what we only did was just to like write out the names, the titles, and get abstracts. Now, in our inclusion criteria stage and exclusion criteria stages, we would be reading the abstract and seeing if what they are talking about is relevant to what you want to do in your own study. So once you find them relevant, you include those papers in your study. If they are not relevant, you exclude them. And your exclusion criteria are just like the opposite of what your inclusion criteria means, meaning that if it's not doing this, then it's doing this and I don't want it. That's it. So for example, here we have, let's say we want to do a study on physical activity and stomach cancer. We are doing a meta-analysis on that. So our inclusion criteria will be that we'll be looking at only papers that we're checking for the association between physical activities and the risk of stomach cancer. Now, why would we say that we do not want studies that are cross-sectional studies, case series, or animal studies? Well, we wouldn't want a cross-sectional study because it doesn't give us an association. We are trying to see association. We are trying to check all the studies that saw associations. That's it. So a cross-sectional study would just look at it at a point. It doesn't give anything about associations, just gives time points of like, you're checking for something to see if something is present. It doesn't show you that something could be associated to the other. That's what cross-sectional studies do. So you wouldn't want to include that studies like that in your meta-analysis or your systematic review. For the case series, they're just like combination of case reports. So case series don't show anything. They just tell us that this thing occurs and it has occurred in 50 people or 100 people. So they are not worthy of, we don't consider them as an observational study. So we wouldn't want any study that is like a case series or a case report. Animal studies also would not be included because our study is based on humans. So we would only want studies that checked for this association among humans. So I hope that's clear. And also in the second round of our selection process, now at the first stage, we were just picking out. Now we would be reading because we're not just looking at it. We decide to read in-depthly now the abstract and decide if I want to include it or not in my study, that particular paper, if I want to include it or not in my review. This is where we make that decision. And now in doing this, for the sake of accountability again, clarity, and ensuring that no one is making any mistake, systematic reviews, meta-analysis requires collaboration with others. Because what a person A sees as yes, the next person might see it as no. So what you would want to do is let's imagine we're two, researcher one and there's you, researcher two. We both look at the same number of papers and read their abstracts and check their titles. You and I would do that individually. And I will make my own independent decision. You make your own decision as to whether we should include the study or not. Now, in the process whereby we've done this, when we've both done that, we now move to a place called the reconciliation stage. And this would be that at the end of the day, I said yes, final in our flow chart now that we are deciding this is a confirmed paper that we'll be working on for this meta-analysis. In a situation whereby I agreed and said yes, and you said no, or the next person says no, I don't want to include this paper in this meta-analysis, we would both decide to just include it because we can't come to an agreement in that situation. So remember, in the first stage, we both said yes, definitely that paper goes in. The second one, I said yes, you said no, or you said no, I said yes. We would include such paper. Now, the time where we would both come together and say no is the time we decide to remove that paper. So that paper would not join in our meta-analysis because you and I came to an agreement and we're like, no, we do not want this paper. And that's what this reconciliation stage includes. So you don't, and sometimes when you are making that decision, you would give a reason. So, we've made the decision now. So now you are giving a reason. Okay, I decided to include this paper, or most times the reasons you give is for the exclusion. So we're excluding this paper because it does not do so, and so. You generally don't have to give reasons for including. You only give a decision. And if it's an exclusion, you will say, we're choosing not to include this paper because it does not, the title or the study design is not in line with the kind of study design we have in mind for meta-analysis of this particular topic. So there are some times where you will get like multiple papers from, I don't know if you've noticed that, like you go online and you're seeing the same author, different papers, but it looks like it was the same study setting, like they were checking the same population. They used the same methodology. Do you get what I mean? In that situation, you generally just want to just report all those papers. If Mr. Akoni did 5 papers in Ibadan, same population, used the same statistical plan and did the same statistical analysis, we do not include those papers into our meta-analysis as different papers. No, we'll just pick them as one. Because anything we do that is different from that would skew the results that we'll get for the meta-analysis. It will skew the whole process because we are showing that there are different papers, whereas it's just one paper. So in order to understand this stage, know that the paper must come from the same person, was done within the same population at the same time, using probably the same methodology. That's the only time we decide to say, okay, we're just reporting them as just one study. Any other thing, you might decide to report them as different studies if it doesn't meet this criteria that is noted. Now, there's sometimes you would not be so lucky to find all the information you need when looking at a paper, and you're wondering what's going on. What do I do? Sometimes you could use this website that is given, or you check ResearchGate and see if you find more information. You could reach out to your friends from other institutions to see, like, excuse me, I can't find this paper. Could you please help me with it? I've done that before. I do that a lot. You could also find the information of the corresponding author of the paper and email them. It doesn't take so much to just try to email and be like, I read your paper. I do not understand, or I have not found this particular information. Could you please provide this information? Sometimes you'd not just go to the corresponding author, you go to like the authors of the paper, and know that when you are reaching out to people like this, you have to be as detailed and straightforward and quick as possible because they get so many emails like that. So you are not beating around the bush and trying to tell them stories that do not align. Just be very straightforward and direct in your request. Or you could tweet about it. If you're on Facebook, you could send a message to your community and be like, does anyone know about this paper or something like that? So yeah, that's how it's done. Now here again is the reminder that we are still following all we are doing. Remember, in the process where we identified the papers, we did our screening, we excluded papers, we decided to come together as 2 reviewers to look at the papers and made a decision or not. It goes into this flow chart. The point where we probably decided to ask people for information, whether we got it or not, we include. When we remove a paper, what were the reasons? Even if the paper kind of like met it, but what were the reasons? It was a case report, it was an animal study, So the cross-sectional study, we note these things down. Accountability matters a lot. At the end of the day, this flowchart should be able to, without you being there, explain the process of selecting your papers and the total papers you ended up working with. Now, we're done with that. So we want to extract data. Now, again, Excel looks like the best bet to me. So in the process where you want to extract your data from the paper, now you're going into that paper one after the other. Maybe after the 4,000 that we started with, we end up having like 50. Yeah, it can really come low like that. It all starts high, then goes low. You come to like 50 or 100 or 20 papers, then you now begin to you determine what kind of information you could check. You could do an Excel and say the author's name, the city the study was conducted, the study design that was used, from when to when, that's the period of the study you notice, what was their sample size, the exposure, or probably they did an intervention. What kind of exposure or intervention did they give? How long did they give it for? At what dose or intensity? Did they check for baseline data at the beginning? Did they collect baseline data from the participants? You want to create a very, very well-detailed data extraction database. You want it to be as detailed as possible, that it accounts for every form of information that you would potentially need. You also want to see if there were bias in the study, in that particular study. Did the authors note or write about any follow-up issues, selection bias? Did they talk about missing data? You want to include it. Now, you want to also include information on what kind of estimates that they derived from the papers. Like, did they calculate odds ratio? Were they reporting only means? Did they report standard deviation? You want to have those information on your Excel spreadsheet so that it is easy for you to like look at them at a go. Now, sometimes the exposure and outcome variables are usually like hard to like understand. When you're looking at a paper, sometimes you don't know what they were really checking out for. It can get confusing at times like that. So when you want to extract the full details of the exposure, first try to understand what these authors define the exposure to be. Because you will see that sometimes you're reading a paper, they will tell you, for the purpose of this study, we defined mental health to be blah, blah, blah. Meaning that it might not be the same straight line definition that mental health is giving. So for their own study, what they define, they had their own strict definition. So you want to note that. The duration of the exposure, you want to note it. Did they give people some kind of treatment or some diet, food or things like that, or supplements? At what intensity and dose you want to? And there sometimes they have complex interventions whereby one study was giving people food and at the same time gave them money for transportation and gave them money, gave them like access to a mental health provider. Imagine a study that's trying to see probably the impact of mental health and well-being on performance at work. So you are giving an intervention to know, then you are giving people food, you gave them money, you gave them access to like groceries once in a month. Once you do that, you have to, if the study says that they did all those things, you would have to note them and list them that they didn't just give one intervention, they gave multiple interventions. Also, regarding the outcome, the study would define what they regard as their outcome, how they measure the outcome, at what point did they check for the outcome? Was it 6 months? Did they do like every 6 months we're assessing our participants to see what is going on? How frequently were they checking for outcome? How did they measure it? Did they measure it by themselves or did the participants report it? If the study gives you that information, please note them. Also, you've done all that part. And like I said, there are some effect estimates that are recorded, like your odds ratio and things like that. In a case whereby you're checking a particular paper and you cannot find those information, sometimes these things are very easy to calculate because they've already given you like other information so you can quickly calculate them yourself. In a situation where you are unable to calculate it, and if you decide to do calculate it, you see this table down. It gives you the various ways that you can quickly calculate any data that wasn't given. In a situation where you are not able to do that, you can check if other papers have done, like other meta-analyses have included that study and what did they report for that paper. You could use that. You could reach out again to the author or to the authors or corresponding authors. You could decide to just leave it and not do anything about it and say that they did not provide it and keep moving on. I think that about wraps up today's presentation, but let's look at what our key takeaway is. I think the key takeaway for anyone that has listened to this presentation or watched this presentation is that doing a meta-analysis is like a very rigorous process. When I say rigorous, means that you have to be as detailed as possible in ensuring that you are searching for papers from the search process to the end. You're searching for papers and you are making sure that you are getting all papers that are related to your study. It also requires you to have, when we talk about the flowchart, to have an accountability, consider the flowchart as an accountability thing where you are making informed reports so that any other person would be able to look at what you've done and understand it clearly. It is very rigorous and exhaustive. You also need collaboration. So you would need to find people that you can do a meta-analysis with and you all can agree together to work on it. So yeah, if you do have questions or comments, you could reach out to Start Clinic and see if anybody can be of help. Until then, bye and have a nice day.